Hi, my name is Vesna Karapetrova, and we're here today at Canadian Macedonian Place on Tuesday, September 30th, 2014, to interview Mr. Chris Peter Mason for the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society. Good afternoon, Mr. Chris Mason, and welcome to our interview. We're really happy that we're able to have you here to share your life story for the archives of the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And can we start with your name? Chris Peter Mason sounds very Canadian. What is the Macedonian version?
Well, our name was Mason, M-A-S-I-N. Somewhere along the line, Peter got added in because that was my father's name.
Okay.
So it became Chris Peter Mason. A lot of people call me Christopher, which is wrong. But in Macedonian, that was Christaki.
Oh.
But it's really Chris.
And Mason, was that a short form for something that your father decided?
As far as I know, it was the original Mason.
Okay. Can you tell us where you were born?
I was born in Perkopana, in the county of Florina, province of Macedonia, Greece, at August 31st, 1934.
Okay. And do you have any brothers and sisters?
I had two sisters. One was 6 years younger, and the other one is 7 years older.
Their names?
The young one was Virginia, and she passed away about 8-9 years ago. And Stephanie is the older one. She's still alive, and tomorrow she will be 87 years old.
And was Stephanie born in Canada or in Prekopana, Macedonia?
In Prekopana. She was born, my father got married in 1926. She was born in 27, and in 1928, my dad left and came to Canada.
Okay, and now we can talk about your parents. Who are your parents, and when were they born?
They were born in Perkopana. My dad was Peter Petros, and my mother was Paroshkavi. Her maiden name was Papayanakis.
So, okay, and where were they born?
In Macedonia, Greece.
So they were also born in the same village, Prekopana?
Yes.
Okay, and with your parents, when you were young in Prekopana, what language did you speak?
Well, outside we spoke Greek because we weren't allowed to speak Macedonian outside. But in the house we spoke Macedonian.
Okay, and you had grandparents. What language did they speak to you?
They spoke to me in Macedonian.
Okay.
Now the picture here shows my grandfather and my grandmother there.
And what are their names?
He was Dine, and because he was a big man, they called him Buchuto. And my grandmother was Sultana.
And do you know when they were born? Your grandparents?
Well, my dad was born 1904, so they were born back in the 18th century. So I don't know their dates.
Right. And you have aunts and uncles who also lived in the same village?
Or there were all kinds of people that lived in the village. The village had almost 150 homes, and
yes,
we knew a lot of people.
And what language did you speak in the village?
Outside Greek, inside Macedonian.
When you say outside, do you mean outside the house?
Outside the house, in public. You weren't allowed to speak Macedonian, so you spoke Greek.
Do you remember that? Do you remember?
Oh yeah.
Yes, and
Because anytime I spoke Macedonian outside, my dad would say, no,
why did he say that?
we were Macedonians, not because if I had to speak Greek outside, not Macedonian.
You had to speak Greek because,
That was the law.
and Macedonian was not allowed.
No, it was not.
What would do you know what would have happened if somebody spoke Macedonian? And
Well, to tell you the truth, there was a priest
yes,
who conducted a service in Macedonian. He was put in jail.
that's
So it became quite severe.
yes. Do you remember what kind of punishment other people got? So many got put in
No,
jail.
I was only 4 years old. So.
Right, but you remember about the priest.
Well, that story came out later. I didn't know about it at the time. But
Right. And I know you were very young when you were in your place of birth, in your village Prekopana, 4
Right.
years old. But you have some memories of the village. You mentioned
Oh,
the number of houses. What are some fond memories that you have?
Oh, I could draw you a picture of the whole village, where the cheshma, where the water, where the well was, where the school was, where the church was.
Yes?
And where my grandfather's house was, and where my mother's father lived down the road.
What was it called?
The house or
The mala, the areas.
Oh, Prekopana. It was all Prekopana.
Okay. And you mentioned how many houses were there at that time?
Oh, my sister I was talking to her, and she was 6 years older.
Yes.
So she remembered more than I did. And she felt that there was over 150 houses.
Yes, that's quite large. And how many people would you say lived at the time?
Oh, there'd be a couple thousand people.
Were most of the people Macedonian?
Oh, they were all Macedonian.
Just everybody was Macedonian.
Everybody.
Everybody. What are some fond memories that you have of the village life that you remember?
To tell you a little story, I was talking to my father many years later, and I said, I remember our dog, Murjo.
Murjo.
It was about that big, and I said, we had a fence that was 7, 8 feet high. He says, Cinco, the dog was only this big, and the fence was only 3 feet. Because you were so small, everything looked big to you.
Yes.
So I remember going out into the court. They had a little courtyard.
Yes.
And that's where the outhouse was. That's where you went to the bathroom.
Uh-huh.
And I remember the inside of the house. There was a big fireplace. On the right side, there was a bed that my grandfather slept on occasionally. And then there was a loom that they spun wool and made yarn out of on the other side. So it was a
very typical house.
And then there was bedrooms upstairs. So and then a barn in the back with animals and cows and whatever.
What did your family do in the village for a living?
Farming.
Yes.
Everybody lived off the land. My mother's father was almost like a professional hunter. He would go out and kill wild animals.
Boars.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he would take the leather and walk 4 or 5 miles to Koster and to sell the pelts.
Sell the pelts.
Yeah, and on the way back, he'd bring me a little melon.
That was a big treat.
Oh yeah, it was fantastic.
And that was Dedo
Dedo
Tsilo. And do you remember who your friends were? What games you played? With who you played? Not so much.
Sticks and stones, and nothing. I don't remember that, you know. All I can remember was that they were trying to get me to go to school, and I said, no, I'm going to school in my father's country.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well,
Where was your father?
my father left, as I mentioned to you, in 1928.
Yes.
Both my grandparents had come, grandfathers had come in 1911, 1912, and they stayed in Canada for about 9 or 10 years,
Yes.
and then went back to the old country. One of them was a professional hunter, and the other worked for the railway, cleaning the railway, the ties. And when my dad came here, he worked at Canada Packers for 25 cents a day for a couple of years. And then after that, he got into the restaurant business with 3 other partners. And he stayed in Canada until 1933. He became a citizen of Canada and came back to the old country. I was born in 34. And in early 35, a rumor was going around that the Greeks were going to conscript the Macedonians into the army. So my dad snuck across the border into Yugoslavia in early 1935 and got over to Trieste, which was Italy at the time. From there, took a train up to Paris and then booked a passage on the boat back to Canada. So in 35, he was back on Canadian soil. And it wasn't until 4 or 5 years later, 1939, he brought my mother, my sister, and I to Canada. There was about 30 of us that left the village and all traveled together. We went up to Paris, where we were all examined by a doctor, so we would be healthy enough to travel to come to Canada. And I remember correctly, there was a couple of ladies got rejected, but that was a story of us coming to Canada.
Yes, and you came with a passport.
That's
and,
right.
We're very fortunate that you have kept the passport. It's right here for us to see. And that is a picture of your mother and?
My sister and I.
Yes. How old were you?
There I was 4.5 years old.
Yes. And what kind of passport was it? It's a Greek passport.
It was a Greek
right?
passport.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your last name here is spelled...
M-A-C-I-N.
Yes, there's a little story about that. Tell us.
Well, the people who prepared the passports, you say Mason, and they pronounced and they came out with M-A-C-I-N.
Yes.
But when we got to Niagara Falls in Canada, that was corrected, and the proper spelling was shown on the passport as M-A-S-I-N. It's on there with the 3 of us.
Yes. Right there.
That's right.
So that was the proper...
And then we took the train from Niagara Falls to Toronto. And that's where we had this newspaper article of the Macedonians arriving in Toronto.
This is from the Toronto Daily Star.
Right.
And it was, you're right, in March 25th, 1939.
That's right.
That's when you arrived.
Well, the 25th. We arrived on the 24th, and that was the paper for the next day. And
so there was a lot of Macedonians who came at that time.
Oh yeah, there was 20 or 30 of us all together, you know.
Just from Prekopana.
Well, not necessarily from Prekopana, but from Macedonia, the villages in the area. I'm not sure where they were from, but
right. But they were Macedonian.
That's right.
And then when you came to Canada, you left from Paris, you said?
That's right.
And what kind of transportation did you come?
We went to Solon.
Solon, yes.
And then a train up to Paris, and across, and then we took the boat, the Queen Mary, we were 5.5 days on the ocean.
Okay, tell us about the trip. What was it like in the boat?
It was terrible.
Tell us the conditions, yes.
I didn't like the food. All I would eat was peppers. And I could remember on the boat there was swimming pools and flower shops and all kinds of things. But then we had to go down a staircase to a little room, and I opened the drawer of the dresser, and there were all kinds of noisemakers from New Year's Eve. But that's about all I remember of the boat itself. It was huge. Now, there is one story. There was a little girl about 4 or 5 years old, that wanted to see the ocean. And there's a porthole about 1.5 feet off the ground. And this little girl leaned into the hole and she was going to fall right in. And my sister pulled her back and saved her from killing her, from dying.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, that was one of the stories on board.
Great. And where did you land with the Queen Mary?
New York.
You landed in New York?
I believe, yeah.
Yes? Okay. And when you landed, did you have somebody waiting for you?
No, not as far as I know. Because my uncle was with us, and he sort of took us under his wing, and he controlled where we went and everything. So
yes. So after New York, what happened?
we took a train
Yes.
to Niagara Falls,
Yes.
and then another train from Niagara Falls to Toronto. And that was March 24th, 1939.
And where did the train stop in Toronto?
Union Station.
Okay, and who was waiting for you?
My father, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was here, yeah. My dad would have been there.
Yes. So you don't recall the actual
No,
moment
no.
because, yes, you were quite young.
No, I remember years later when my grandfather came back to Canada.
Yes.
And we picked him up at Union Station, and I said, Dillo, how old are you? And he said, in English, he says, 82, boy.
He remembered.
That's right.
Yes. Now, when you came to Canada with your family, what were those early years like? Where did you live with your parents?
My dad had bought a house on Dundas Street. I think the width of it was no more than 20 feet. There was a sidewalk, a stone step, and the front door. And the streetcar went by at night, went by every half hour, no more than 40 feet from the front door.
Mm-hmm.
So we got accustomed to sleeping with this noise. But we had a little house with two rooms on the main floor, a living room and a kitchen. And we had 3 little bedrooms upstairs with a bathroom. And we lived there till I was 12 years old.
Mm-hmm. And what did your father do?
He was in the restaurant. He was in the restaurant with 3 partners.
Do you know what the name was? Do you remember?
Gladstone Lunch.
Gladstone Lunch.
Right.
Interesting name. Is there a story about why they called it Gladstone Lunch?
Well, the next street from the restaurant was Gladstone.
Okay.
And this side was Dufferin, so they called it Gladstone Lunch.
Okay, being a Macedonian restaurant, I thought maybe they took the name from Gladstone, the British premier. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, he's the one that said Macedonia for the Macedonians.
Right.
Okay, so the restaurant business, your father was in it with partners, 2 other partners?
They had, there was 4 of them.
4.
2 worked 12-hour shifts, and 2 slept upstairs. When the 2 woke up, they came down, and the other 2 went back. The bed never got cold. They slept. All of them had their wives were back in the old country.
That's what I was going to ask. Were they Macedonian as well, the partners?
They
Do you
were.
remember their names?
John Klekwas was one. Steve Muchas, my uncle, and Chilo Marsha Uslis was the third.
And they were here by themselves, and their families were in Macedonia.
That's right.
They were Pechalbari, right?
That's right. My dad says from one week to the other, they never saw the light outside other than to take the garbage out the back door.
Because they worked so hard.
And my dad learned how to make a Western sandwich from the policeman who used to come at the back door.
Is that right? He made good Western sandwiches?
That's right.
Okay. Can you tell us what your life was like at the very beginning in Canada? You didn't speak English. How did you learn?
Well, it was a little rough. I promised my wife I wouldn't tell you this story, but I was in grade 1
Yes.
in recess for 15 minutes, and I had to go to the bathroom bad. And for 13 minutes, I thought, do I have enough time or not? Do I have enough time or not? And all of a sudden, the last minute, I went into the bathroom, I pulled down my pants, and just as I was doing my work, the bell rang. Up with the pants and ran to the school. Well, I made a mess all the way into the school, right into the school, into the classroom. And and the teacher kept walking up and down the aisle, you know, trying to figure out where this odor's coming from. She finally got to my desk and she went into the cloakroom and there was an intercom.
Yes.
And in 5 minutes, my sister was at the door. She took me by the ear and she dragged me home 4 blocks, kicking me all the way home and crying. She says, you made a mess of things. It's in our new country, a new school, and you had to do this for me. And she took me, she opened the door of our house, she grabbed me and she threw me into the door and said to my mother, you clean up this mess.
Oh. Now, but you were afraid to say that you wanted to go, that you needed to go, or you couldn't?
No, you got to keep in mind that in Macedonia, the teacher was the ultimate authority.
Yes.
So whatever the teacher said, that was it. And well, I thought the same thing in Canada. I was frightened of the teacher. Now, another incident where the teacher actually took the window and she's opening the window and she says, Chris, window.
Yes.
And I said in Macedonian, Brakuchka, that's a pinjera.
Okay, so that was grade 1.
But that's in grade 1, and I had a friend 2 doors down, Warren,
Yes.
that I played with, and he taught me what a hammer was and what this was and that was, and we got along wonderful. And when I had to move, I cried all the way.
So how long did you stay in that neighborhood before you moved?
We moved the day I turned 12 years old. So I moved 7 years. I stayed on Dundas Street. Now we moved out to Willard Avenue out in the West End.
Yes.
And there was no streetcars.
You couldn't sleep, right?
Nobody could sleep because the noise was gone. But anyways, no, we enjoyed it. I didn't take long to learn the language. When you're motivated, you can do wonders.
Did you have Macedonian friends when you first lived in your first house?
Well, there would be my parents' friends. There was a Panto family that used to come over and help us along with whatever we needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But my only friend was the English fellow 2 doors up the street.
Right, and his name was?
Warren.
Okay. Now, did your parents go to school when you came with your mom? How did she manage to integrate?
No, she didn't go to school.
Mm-hmm.
My mother went along. For years we thought she couldn't speak English. And then we were out in the West End. This would be 10, 15 years after we came from Canada. We caught her speaking English to the next door neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And, haha, you do speak English. But she was embarrassed to speak English because it was broken English.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you moved into your other house, what did you were about 12 years old, what was life like for you?
But it was wonderful because we had our own bedroom and we had a backyard, and we could play road hockey on the street, and
Yeah.
baseball, and we'd hit the ball on the neighbor's lawn, and he'd steal our ball, and
Mm-hmm. And by this time, you were in grade?
grade 9, 8, 7.
Yes. Were there any Macedonians in your class when you went to the new class?
That one over there. Virginia was in my class.
Virginia Stemenoff.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you, as you continued to go to grade 7 and on, tell us about what schooling you had.
Well, I ended up going to Runnymede Collegiate, and I finished 5 years there. I completed the senior matriculation. I wrote 9 papers in grade 13 and passed. So
Can you tell us a little bit about what that entails, senior matriculation?
Yeah, that's right. Senior, well, it was called a senior matriculation.
Was that like a diploma?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For high school?
Finishing high school.
Yes. And what did you major in? Like was
After that, there's a little story that when I was in grade 12 or 13, I can't remember, they announced that there would be certain professionals that were coming into the school to show us or direct us as to what we wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And a doctor had come to our place and suggested, he says, why don't you become a CA? And I says, what's that? So he explained to me, and then when they announced that it was going to be a CA in room so-and-so, I went there at 4 o'clock, and actually I ended up getting a job with his firm, and I started at $125 a month.
in 1948? That was pretty good, wasn't it?
Not bad for a student.
Yes.
Now the problem was, I was university material,
Yes.
but university cost $400. I had the $400, but I wouldn't have any spending money all year long. So in the accounting profession, you made the $125, but you also did lessons. So you studied through the University of British Columbia, 26 lessons a year for 5 years.
Like a correspondence course.
Correspondence. You did a lesson and you had a certain period of time to complete it. And then you mailed it in. It was marked and sent back to you. If you got a certain percentage, then you were allowed to write the exams at the end of the year. So it was, and that went from 48 to 50, no, 48 to, no, 48, 53. No, 53 I graduated from high school. No, and then I ended up working for the tax department for 6 years, from 59 to 65. And there I started a correspondence course with a CGA, Certified General Accountant. So I ended up getting a CGA as well.
You did it your way.
Yeah.
Wow.
By, let's see, from 59 to 65, I got the CGA about 64, 65. And in 65, I went into, worked for a CA in public accounting. And I left the tax department making $7,000 a year. They were hiring new CAs at $6,000. So this gentleman offered me $150 a week pay, plus a third of all business I could bring in. And I'm talking to Macedonians, and they said, well, you quit the government, I'll be your first client. Mm-hmm. I had $9,000 promised to me. But you know, a word is a word. By the end of the year, I got $200. But anyways, I became that man's partner for a period of about 3 years. The firm became Linton and Mason. He used to spend money like water. So I left him in 69 and joined another man by the name of Harold Wilson. It became Wilson and Mason for a period of 3 or 4 years. Then we brought in a fellow by the name of McLaren. Came Wilson, Mason, and McLaren. And then we moved up to Winford Drive. We were at Don Mills in Eglinton. We moved up to Winford Drive. And I broke that partnership up too, for various reasons. One man was a born-again Christian, and he thought if he ended up in heaven, he saw me there, he'd be disappointed. So anyways, we got out of that partnership, and I became a proprietor for about 3 years.
Proprietor you owned?
Just myself.
By yourself, the business.
I had my wife keeping my books and 2 staff members. And it continued for 2-3 years.
Now, you were very busy with your career, initially studying your university courses at the same time and then working. During this time, were you involved in any Macedonian organizations or churches?
I lived in the church.
Which one?
St. Cyril Methody.
Yes, tell us about your involvement there.
Well, we were a group of Macedonians. We developed a blue room in the basement of St. Cyril's for people that we thought were worthy of our organization. And then we ran the dances upstairs. We used to have 150, 200 people come in on Sunday night dances. And a fellow friend of mine, George, and I used to keep the books. And over the years, we ran the thing for 2 or 3 years.
When was that? In the 50s or 60s? In the 50s, yes?
60s, I think, yeah. No, 50s?
50s?
Yeah.
You ran and organized dances through your Blue Room group, yes?
But we came to the end of the year and we had handled $13,000. We went to the senior committee with a check for I think $5,000, and we were going to keep $500 to finance next year's activities. And when they saw we handled $13,000, the whole budget for the church was no more than $25,000. So they took it all away from us.
So this was like a younger group that you had formed, right?
Now, we had, in the Blue Room, we had maybe 65 members. And we had dances upstairs. 100, 150 people would come in every Sunday night. But then, because they took it all away from us, it just fell apart.
Yes. Now, there was, like you said, a young Macedonian group at St. Cyril.
Right.
Yes. And tell us the names of the contemporaries, people who were involved.
Oh, jeez.
Some of the friends that you remember.
Well, my buddy George Urgiev was one of them.
Yes.
There was a whole route. Butchie Evans, Eli Eliav, the minister's son.
Yes.
Who was the fellow that was a lawyer that...
A lawyer?
Huh? Vasov.
Vasov? Uh-huh.
But this is going back. This is going back
Quite a while.
45 years. Jim Vasov. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But there was a. They all left.
Why?
The senior committee took away our right to run the dance hall.
They took your money.
Well, it didn't matter the money, but we couldn't run the dances anymore because we couldn't hire a band.
Mm-hmm. That was unfortunate.
Very fortunate. 10, 15 years later,
Mm-hmm.
all these gentlemen that were members got married,
Yes.
had children, mortgages, and the church invited us all back for a dinner so we could come back to the church.
Yes.
Well, it was too late.
Were some of those people involved in other churches by then?
Yeah.
Yes.
St. George's. We would go down to St. George's for their dances. But we're getting into a realm of religion and everything that just, it hurts.
Yes.
Because they destroyed what I thought was a very good organization.
Mm-hmm. Now, were your parents involved in any Macedonian activities or organizations?
Only as church members.
They also belong to St. Cyril?
That's right.
Yes. Okay, and then when you tell us about your involvement with Canadian Macedonian Place.
Well, my firm, which was Adams, Mason, and Tilley, we were involved in the initial audit of CMP when there was no building. It was just fundraising. And we did the audit for 6 years at no cost to the home.
Voluntarily?
Volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was built, I guess it would maybe 36 years ago. They bought the land, put the building up, big mortgage with Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and we've done the audit. I retired in 2000, but the firm still does the audit, and it's been now 36 to 38 years that we've done the audit, and with each audit fee, we've donated back $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 back to the home. So over the years, I think the firm has donated over $50,000 to the home.
Okay, that's quite a contribution.
Well, since I retired, I'm a member of the
Executive
CMP committee, but I don't I'm not involved in the audit anymore, the firm is.
So you're still involved in the executive committee, in the planning of
Not,
events?
not the executive committee, no, just there's a committee of, how many, Virginia? 50?
There are 50 members? 120 members
Yeah.
of Canadian Macedonian Place?
They,
Supporters? Yeah, supporters. So you're
once a year, they get together and review the financial statements and make decisions as to what the various people have recommended.
so your involvement continues.
Well, just very little at this point.
Right.
I'm too old for this kind of stuff.
Is there anything else that we can you can tell us about Canadian Macedonian Place and when it was, how it was built, and anything that you recall about the financial situation or any activities that especially left?
Well, I know that the land was purchased at a price of about $400,000, and then there was a fellow by the name of Kushar, who was the architect,
Yes.
and as a matter of fact, he ended up doing a development up in Midland where we reside, and he passed away a number of years ago. But I wasn't directly involved in the finances because as an auditor, you're outside that realm of decision making.
But in terms of your memories for the beginnings of CMP,
Well, I think it took off right from the start. It was a success. They've ran the golf tournament.
yes.
They've ran the golf tournament on an annual basis. That golf tournament has been going for over 65 years.
Do you participate in that?
Well, the last couple of years I haven't because of operations I've had, but up to that time I attended the golf tournament.
Great. Can you give us some of the names of the people involved in the beginning, in the beginnings of CMP that were involved?
Oh, Vas Evans, John Bidoff,
You remember working with them and
Tommy Yokas. He was the treasurer for, 30 years. That young lady over there has been involved forever.
Virginia Stemenov?
Virginia. I can't think of anybody to tell you the truth. But
Chris Pellier was also involved?
oh yes, Chris Pellier was very heavily involved, and he was president for a number of years of the home. Jordan Bidoff, Stan Thomas. Now Stan Thomas, in my list, I put down that I was a treasurer for a number of years of the Canadian Macedonian Federation.
Yes, tell us about that.
John Bidoff was president. I was secretary. Tom
Stan?
Dimoff was the secretary.
Okay.
Tom had an office in John Bidoff's office downtown at no cost to the Federation. Tom had access to telephone, to postage, stationery, everything at no cost to the Federation. And over the 3 or 4 years that I was involved, Stan Thomas, because of his employment with Shoppers Drug Mart, came up with about $1 million worth of drugs. Now, keep in mind, the drugs in Canada have an expiring date.
Yes.
So after 60 or 90 days, these drugs were not saleable in Canada, but we could use them back in Macedonia. So we shipped somewhere about $1 million worth of drugs to Macedonia. We sent 2 doctors, can't remember their names now. 2 doctors.
Stefanovic
Yeah,
was one of them?
yeah. We sent 2 doctors over to make sure that the drugs got into the proper hands, and I think that happened. So I was very pleased with that. And then at the end of this whole fiasco, I shouldn't call it a fiasco, a venture, there was about $150,000 owing to the bank. John Bidoff personally took care of it.
This was money that was owed because
We were paying politicians to help Macedonia.
in which way?
Cash.
Right, but to recognize Macedonia, because this was the time when Macedonia, before it became independent, 1991 is when Macedonia became independent.
Well, before that.
Before that, so this was a
Wait.
lobbying effort?
A lobbying effort. We paid lobbyists
Yes,
through another corporation.
yes.
In other words, to help Macedonia. Now, hopefully that resulted correctly, but anyways, my involvement with the Federation I was very pleased with it.
Mm-hmm. And the Federation, so the involvement of the Federation was mostly to create support and lobbying from European politicians to recognize Macedonia?
That's right.
Oh, wonderful.
And to help and to get medicine to the Macedonian people.
Yes, more than $1 million worth of medicine. And these
that
doctors went
that
back
was
with
$1 million of retail.
Yes.
And I don't think we paid that much for it, but
So you had the 2 doctors that accompanied the medicine. Did they report back to you that things were went in the right hands and everything went well?
I think they reported back to John on that basis. I'm not sure.
Yes, and what happened to the Federation?
It supposedly still continues, but it went down the tube. Nobody continued it.
So after this debt was taken care of by Mr. Bitov,
Right.
the organization didn't continue for whatever reasons?
Well, I think it continued for a couple of years, but nothing happened.
Transpired, yes.
Nothing happened.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now about your personal life. Can you tell us a little about who is your wife and where you met?
My true love. Lena had a sister called Lillian, and she was 2 years older than Lita.
And your wife's name is Lida?
Yeah, my friend of mine was taking out her sister, and we would go up to Lita's house to pick up her sister, and that's when I met Lita. But I was 19 and she was 13. She was only a little baby. I mean,
Yes.
it was nothing. But a couple of years later, I noticed her. And through the church, we kept in touch, and friends of ours, when they got married, we were all there, and we'd see each other. And finally, when I was about 18, or no, not 18, about 22, I guess, I was going to go New Year's Eve with another lady, and George, my buddy, was driving me up Pape, and he says, "What's wrong with you?" I said, I said, I really don't want to go out with that girl. I want to go out with Lita. He pulled up on the curb. He says, there's a telephone. Phone Lita. I said, how can I phone Lita? He said, you phone Lita. If she'll come out with you, you cancel the other one. And that's what we did. I called her, and
what did she say?
She says, I don't know why didn't you call yesterday? She says, I made a date with someone. And I says, well, I'm canceling mine, you cancel yours. She says, okay.
And that was your first date?
That was when we started.
And did you live close to like in the same neighborhood, or?
No. I was in the West End. She was in the North End. You know, by this time I'm working full time with the tax department, and I'd run home, shower, shave, get ready, and drive up to her place almost every night.
Yes. How long was your courtship?
A couple of years, I guess.
And
I asked her to go steady, and I said, you know, going steady for me is like being engaged. She says, yeah. And then all of a sudden she says, when am I going to get a ring? Somehow we managed, and this October we finished 54 years married.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so you got married on October
22nd,
1960.
1960.
And where did you get married?
What's that?
What church did you get married at?
St. Cyril Methody. We got married by a lawyer. Jordan Dimoff was the priest who later became a lawyer.
But you had a church wedding.
Oh, church wedding. We had 565 people for a sit-down dinner.
There was a lot of Macedonians, right?
Well, her dad invited every bank manager in Toronto.
And can you tell us a little about your wife's family? Lida, what's her last name?
Zuglov. Her mother was an absolute jewel. She was my biggest fan. We got along fantastically well. And her father was a great man. He advanced us $1,800 in 1961 so we could buy a house. We paid $16,300 with $1,800 down. Then we moved into a nice semi-detached home, and we lived there about 5.5 years.
This was in East York, or?
No, in northeast. There was Jane and Shepherd area. And 5.5 years later, I said, it's becoming Italian here. Let's get out of here. And so we put it up for sale, and sure enough, an offer came in from Giovanni Conte, Italian fellow, nice man. They moved in with 14 kitchen chairs. They had a whole family living to there, and we enjoyed them. And then we moved on into Willowdale and bought another house there.
Yes, and you mentioned your wife's parents. They're Macedonian as well?
Yes.
What village are they from?
Her mother grew up in Bulgaria, but they had left Macedonia way back when, 1918? Something like that.
From what village?
Vombel.
From Vombel.
Vombel.
Vombel, yes.
We went to Greece about 10 years ago. We went to Vombel, and all there is a pile of rocks.
Yes.
Nothing left.
The people are not there.
No.
No, they're in Canada, in Macedonia, all over the world.
That's right.
Yes.
I'm talking too much.
No, it's actually really good information. Can you tell us more about your family?
Well, no, my dad stayed in the restaurant business all his life. Gladstone Lunch, after 32 years, the lady wouldn't renew their lease. And I says, why didn't you buy the building? She says, it was $1,500. She says, we were only paying $60 a month rent. So anyways, then he worked, he opened another restaurant on Jane Street.
And what was that restaurant called?
Chris's Open Kitchen.
And that was his own?
Yeah, my mother was the chef.
Right. Now, when you went back to Prekopana to visit, as you mentioned, it was not, there was, devastated, really, not a lot of houses. What happened to the village? How did it get into that state?
It was burned down by the Greeks and pilfered by the Albanians. And when we got there 8-9 years ago, there was only about 5 houses.
Standing.
There was a church and then a school. But I saw my grandfather's house in ruins, just a pile of rocks.
So you remembered where it was.
As a matter of fact, one thing I remember is we walked down a little bit and there was a well. And I said, excuse me, but that well was not there when I left. It was down the street closer to the school. He says, yes, this is a new one. It's only been 4 or 5 years. So I could remember where the Cheshma was.
Where the Cheshma was, yes. And from what you heard from other people, so the village was burnt, and when was that done?
Oh, God.
Would that be in the war?
During the war, I presume,
When the Greeks and the Macedonians were
I don't know. I just don't know.
Okay. Now, I just wanted to ask you на македонски нещо да ни кажеш.
What's that?
Да ни кажеш нещо по наши, по македонски?
Що сакаш?
Да ни кажеш, що сакаш да му кажеш на младите македонци сега што се тука во Канада? Што треба да прават? Оти вие сте многу успешен цел живот, со многу работа, со многу труд, имате многу постигнато.
Цели македонци наши треба да се го држи Македонија у срцето. Ба тука треба да биде канадејци. Канадејци прво, македонски втори.
И да бидеш канадеец, треба да бидеш што? Што е добар канадеец и македонец во срцето?
Треба да бидеш канадеец. Тука ва држава ми даде всичко.
Да.
На мене ми даде жена, ми даде деца, ми даде работа, ми даде education. Всичко што имам ова држава ми даде.
И младите деца имат исто многу добри шанси да имат добар живот, ама треба да работат.
That's right, треба без работа ништо не става. Треба да спотнеш тровче, не знаеш што е живот.
А за школо, што сакате да му кажете? Да одат на школо добро?
О, ја, треба. Не важи какво школе одат. Може да бидеш plumber, electrician, што не биде.
Да.
Ама наука треба
занает или...
Да станеш, су без ништо не става.
Така, имаме многу македонци, доктори, lawyers.
That's right.
Имаме и во сите гранки на животот има вредни македонци тука во Канада.
О, ја,
Да.
многу.
Кажи ни за вашите деца. Кои се вашите деца? Who are your, can you tell us about your kids? Their names?
Daniel is 51 years old. Има две деца. Голем има 20 години. Втора университет.
Second
University.
Yes.
Малио стана 16. Стана 16 and then други ден license го имаше за каро.
За да вози, а? We can say it in English now. So you have two children? Three. Daniel and
David.
David?
David is married to Rose.
Yes.
And they have two boys, Nicholas and Aaron. Nicholas is 13 and Aaron is 11, sorry. Kimberly, our daughter, is married to Ivers, who is a chef, and they have two girls. Chloe, who's 13, and Lily, who's going to be 10 in January.
Oh, that's lovely. You have granddaughters and grandsons.
6 kids altogether.
Great. That's good. And have your children continued in your footsteps in terms of being successful accountants?
No, they didn't. Well, my grandson is taking up business, if that's close to it.
That's close,
but
yes.
No, my daughter went to Carleton University, and she's a writer. She likes to write, and
are your children married to Macedonians?
No.
No?
Both my sons were married to Italians.
Okay.
The oldest one is divorced, and my daughter married a Latvian.
Okay.
A Latvian boy.
So you have a little bit of the United Nations in your
Oh
family.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay. Is there anything that we missed that you'd like to share? Any stories or anything that you think is important that we may not have had a chance to go through?
Well, it's been a great experience to be associated with CMP. It's in my heart. I've enjoyed everything about it, and I wish it much success in the future.
And why do you think having Canadian Macedonian Place in Toronto is important?
Most of our Macedonians are too proud to come into a living center like this. But this home, I understand, has about 55, if not mistaken, of Macedonians. And recently, there have been residents of this establishment that are my age and at my station in life. They're young people who I know and I've grown up with. They're not the old Baba that's going to be pushed off to the old age home. These are young men who are making the decision to come to CMP, which is a good thing.
And they've shared with you that it's a happy experience?
Well, I've known them, so I see them here, and through various people I've learned that they're happy here. And
made the decision themselves.
Sure, it's a great place to be.
Absolutely. We hear that a lot as we walk through the
Yeah.
halls here.
No, but keep in mind that CMP, it would not be where it is without a lot of volunteers. There's been a lot of hard work went into keeping this place going.
And we thank you for all your volunteering support as well, because it is truly, like you said,
My pleasure.
voluntary effort on everybody's part.
Thank you. It was nice talking to you.
It was a pleasure for me too.